I tried ignoring her the way you ignore a song that gets stuck in your head, by turning the volume down and pretending silence meant control. It worked for a while. Or at least, I told myself it did. Until the day she said my name like it mattered, and my hands forgot what they were supposed to be doing. We worked in the same place, though together would have been an exaggeration. A small, slightly outdated bookstore tucked between a phone repair shop and a dentist's office that always smelled like mint. I handled the back, inventory, returns, dust-heavy boxes no one else wanted to lift. She ran the front like she owned the air in the room. Calm voice. Straight posture. The kind of woman who didn't rush even when everyone else did. She was in her mid-40s, maybe older. I never asked. She wore neutral colors, nothing flashy, but somehow it always looked intentional. Her hair was usually tied back, except when she forgot, which only happened when she was focused on something else. That was rare. We didn't talk much at first, just work things. Polite nods. Thanks here and there. I noticed her before I knew her. The way she paused before answering questions, like she weighed words instead of throwing them away. The way customers leaned in when she spoke. The way she remembered names without making a show of it. I told myself it was admiration. Respect. That was safer. The moment, the one I keep replaying, happened on a slow afternoon. Rain tapping the windows just hard enough to be distracting. The store was quiet in that uncomfortable way, where every movement feels louder than it should. I was struggling with a jammed box cutter, blade stuck halfway out, when she appeared beside me without warning. Careful, she said, not sharp, just observant. I've got it. I replied too quickly, like I needed to prove something. She didn't move away, just watched my hands for a second longer than necessary. Then she reached out, slow, deliberate, and took the box from me. Our fingers brushed. Not dramatic, not accidental either. Enough to make me forget how to breathe properly. You don't have to fight everything, she said, still focused on the box. One clean motion. Done. She handed it back. Our eyes met. There was a pause, not awkward exactly, but loaded. Like both of us were aware something had shifted and neither wanted to be the first to name it. I laughed. Too loud. Guess I overcomplicated it. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. You do that, she said. Not a question. That stayed with me. The certainty in it. Like she'd been paying attention longer than I realized. After that, things changed in small ways. She asked how my day was, and waited for the answer. She brought me coffee once, set it down without comment, like it was nothing. Cold by the time I noticed. I drank it anyway. Sometimes I caught her watching me when she thought I wouldn't notice. Not staring, just checking. And every time, she looked away first. Like she was the one pretending. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That it couldn't. That it shouldn't. Then one evening, as I was locking up the back door, she stood closer than usual. Too close for coincidence. The lights were dimmer. The rain had stopped. She touched my arm, just briefly, and said, almost gently, "You don't have to keep acting like you don't feel it." I nodded, said nothing. But that night, lying awake, it wasn't her voice I heard. It was the way my heart answered before I ever did. The next time we worked together, it wasn't planned. It never was with her. A delivery came in late, boxes stacked wrong, labels half torn. She asked if I could stay an extra hour. Her voice was steady, professional, but she didn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. I told myself that meant nothing. I said yes anyway. The store after closing felt different. Quieter, but heavier. Like the air had weight to it. The front lights were off. Only the back fluorescents humming overhead. Shadows stretched too long between shelves. She stood beside me, sorting invoices, glasses perched low on her nose. I noticed her hands first, not manicured, just clean, practical. A faint tremor when she flipped a page. So small it could have been nothing. I wondered how many people ever noticed that. "You don't have to stay if you're tired," she said without looking up. "I'm fine." A pause. Then, softer, "You always say that." That was new. Not an accusation. Just observation. Again. We worked in silence for a while. Cardboard tearing. Paper stacking. My awareness of her grew louder the quieter we got. The way she exhaled through her nose when something annoyed her. The faint crease between her brows she didn't bother smoothing anymore. She looked tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. At one point, she laughed. Just once. Short. Almost surprised herself. I don't even remember what I said. Something stupid about the delivery company. But the sound of it caught me off guard. It wasn't polished or restrained like her usual smile. It slipped out before she could stop it. She noticed me noticing. Her shoulders straightened immediately. Guard back up. I should finish this, she said, pushing a stack of papers aside. I nodded, but didn't move. She reached for a box on the top shelf, stretched just enough that I saw her hesitate. I stepped forward automatically, took it down before she had to ask. Our hands brushed again. This time she pulled hers back too quickly. Thank you, she said. Then, after a beat, you're very attentive. I didn't know how to respond to that. Compliment or warning, I couldn't tell. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, staring at the floor like it had answers. For a moment, she looked older than before. Not in years. In weight. Sometimes, she said slowly, people think being careful means being cold. I stayed quiet. I'd learned silence mattered with her. She looked up then. Really looked. Her eyes were tired. Yes, but also searching. Like she'd almost said too much and was checking if I noticed. I don't mean you, she added quickly. I know, I said, even though I wasn't sure. Another pause. Longer this time. The kind that presses against your chest. She pushed off the counter, brushed past me, close enough that her sleeve grazed my wrist. She stopped. Just for a second. Didn't turn around. Lock up when you're done, she said. Her voice was steady again. Professional. Gone. But she didn't move right away. And neither did I. Because in that suspended second, her back inches from me, the store holding its breath, I realized the hardest part wasn't wanting her. It was knowing she wanted something too, and choosing not to take it. It happened on a night that felt borrowed. The weather turned without warning. Not dramatic rain, just a steady, soaking kind that made the streetlights blur and kept customers away. We closed early. Too early. The kind of early that leaves space you didn't plan for. She was in the back office when I finished shutting things down. Door half open. Light still on. I knocked once, more out of habit than necessity. You can go, she said. Not unkind. Just automatic. I know. I didn't move. She looked up then. Took her glasses off. Rubbed the bridge of her nose like it ached. For a second, she didn't put the mask back on. That was the moment I should have left. Instead, I stepped inside. I'll wait out the rain, I said. A lie. The rain had nothing to do with it. She hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. We stood there, not quite facing each other. The office was small, too small for distance. A desk, a chair, a filing cabinet humming softly. The smell of old paper and something citrusy she always wore. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at the screen. Froze. The pause was subtle, but I caught it. She turned the phone face down without answering. You don't have to. I started. It's fine, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just work. Silence again. Thicker now. I leaned against the wall. Watched her hands fidget with a pen she wasn't using. She dropped it. Bent to pick it up. Didn't straighten right away. You ever feel like, she said, still crouched, you've spent years making the right choices, and somehow still end up, she stopped. Shook her head. Stood. Never mind. I swallowed. End up where? She looked at me. Really looked. Her eyes weren't guarded this time. They were tired. Bare. Wanting things you already decided you wouldn't. My chest tightened. I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, because I had too many. Another buzz. This time, the phone rang. She stared at it, jaw tight. Finally answered. Yes, she said. No. I told you, this isn't a good time. A pause. I can't do this right now. She closed her eyes. Please don't come here. She hung up. Her hand lingered on the phone like it might ring again. I'm sorry you had to hear that, she said quietly. It's okay. It's not. She sighed, suddenly older, suddenly smaller. I try to keep things contained. I took a step closer before I realized I was moving. She didn't step back. Sometimes, I said, careful, things don't stay contained. Her breath caught. Just barely. We were close now. Close enough that I could see the faint line near her mouth. The one that only showed when she stopped pretending she wasn't tired. close enough to smell the rain on my jacket mixing with her perfume. She lifted her hand, hesitated, let it hover between us. "This is where I'm supposed to stop," she whispered. I nodded, didn't trust my voice. Her fingers brushed my wrist, light, uncertain. A question, not an answer, and for one suspended second, neither of us moved, waiting to see who would be the one to break first. The silence didn't reset after that night. It sharpened. Days passed where we moved around each other like we were sharing a secret we weren't allowed to name. Our conversations shrank. Practical, careful, but everything underneath got louder. Every almost look, every pause that went on a second too long. Then one evening, she closed the front door and didn't turn the lights back on. "We need to talk," she said. Not urgent, not dramatic. Worse, certain. We stood near the counter, the store dim except for the streetlight leaking through the window. Dust floated in the air like it had nowhere better to be. I leaned back against a shelf, arms crossed, like posture could protect me from what was coming. She didn't sit. She rarely did when things mattered. "I don't usually let things blur," she said. "I'm careful about that." I nodded. My throat felt tight, but I didn't interrupt. "This," she continued, gesturing vaguely between us, "was supposed to be nothing. Just proximity. Familiarity. That happens." She stopped, then corrected herself. "That should be all it is." "Is it?" I asked. Soft. Almost to myself. Her jaw tightened. She looked at me then. Not like a manager, not like a woman who knew how to stay composed. Like someone cornered by her own thoughts. "I don't know what this is," she said. And that's the problem. The words settled heavy in the room. I felt exposed, like she'd turned a light on inside me without asking. "I keep noticing when you're not here," she went on. "That's not normal. I rehearse conversations I don't plan to have. I avoid looking at you because when I do, I forget why I'm supposed to be careful." She laughed quietly. No humor in it. "I don't do this." I uncrossed my arms. Took a step forward. Stopped myself halfway. "I don't expect anything," I said. It came out steadier than I felt. "I'm not asking you to explain it. Or fix it." She shook her head. "That's not fair." "To who?" "To you." Her voice wavered, just a little. "Because pretending this is nothing means you end up carrying the weight of it alone." I swallowed. The truth pressed hard against my ribs. "I've been carrying it anyway." That made her flinch. We stood there, staring at each other like the space between us was fragile. Like if one of us moved wrong, something would break that couldn't be repaired. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. The room felt suddenly too quiet. Too honest. "Then tell me what we're doing," I said. Not accusing. Just tired. Because I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked past me at the dark shelves, the locked door, the life she'd clearly organized with intention. When she spoke again, her voice was barely there. "I think," she said slowly, "that I noticed you too late, and now I don't know how to unknow you." She pressed her lips together, as if holding something in. Then she met my eyes and whispered the line that still hasn't left me. "And I'm terrified that the kindest thing I can do is walk away before you realize how much this costs me too." I thought after that conversation things would either explode or disappear. Instead, they went strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty, just full of things people are avoiding. A week passed. Maybe two. We worked different shifts when we could. When we couldn't, we stayed professional to the point of stiffness. I told myself that was maturity. It didn't feel like it. The shift came on an ordinary afternoon. I was in the back, sorting a donation box that smelled like attic dust, when I heard her voice, not talking to a customer. Softer, unsteady. I shouldn't have listened, but it carried. "I'm not ready," she said. Then, after a pause, "I know it's been years. That doesn't mean I'm done." I froze. There was silence, then a quiet exhale. "Please don't ask me that again." When I stepped out, she was alone at the counter, phone in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. She looked up and saw me immediately. No pretending this time. "I didn't realize anyone was back there," she said. "I can go." She shook her head once. "Tired?" "No. Stay." She didn't explain right away. Rang up a customer. Straightened a display that didn't need fixing. When the door finally closed behind the last person, she leaned against the counter and stared at the floor. That was my sister, she said. She thinks it's time I start dating again. Again. The word landed heavier than anything else. I was married, she added, like it was a footnote. A long time. I didn't speak. I let her choose the pace. He died, she said simply. No pause for reaction. Suddenly. 10 years ago. Heart. I felt something shift in my chest. Not jealousy, not fear. Just context snapping into place. I loved him, she went on. Deeply. And when he was gone, everyone kept saying I'd move on. That I'd meet someone else. Like love was a replacement part. She laughed under her breath. I tried once. Years later. It felt wrong. Like I was borrowing a life that didn't belong to me. She finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't wet. Just open. You don't remind me of him, she said, anticipating the thought. That's the problem. You remind me that I'm still capable of wanting. And that scares me more. I swallowed. Because wanting means risking. Because wanting means admitting I survived, she corrected. And part of me doesn't know who I am if that's true. The room felt smaller. Not tense. Intimate in a way that wasn't romantic, just honest. I'm sorry, I said, and meant more than the words could hold. She nodded, then surprised me by reaching out. Not to pull me close, not to cross a line. Just to rest her hand briefly over mine on the counter. Warm. Steady. Thank you for not making this about you, she said quietly. I turned my hand slightly, just enough to return the pressure. She didn't pull away. And in that small, unguarded contact, I realized the shift hadn't been about permission or timing. It was about finally understanding what it cost her to stand where she was, and why, for the first time, she wasn't standing alone. By the time it finally broke, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt overdue. There was no announcement. No moment where one of us said we need to talk again. We were past that. What happened instead was smaller and somehow heavier. It was closing time. Not late, not rushed. Just the two of us moving through familiar motions we could have done blindfolded. I locked the back door. She counted the register. The radio played softly, then cut out mid-song like it lost interest. She didn't turn it back on. When she finished, she sat on the small stool behind the counter instead of standing. That alone told me everything. She looked at the floor for a long time, hands resting in her lap like they were waiting for instructions. I can't keep doing this halfway, she said finally. Not accusing, not emotional, honest in a way that left nowhere to hide. I leaned against the counter, careful not to crowd her. Me neither. She nodded once, as if confirming something she already knew. I keep thinking there's a version of this where we just stop noticing, where it fades. And I asked, and it doesn't. She looked up at me then. No fear in her eyes this time. Just acceptance. It hasn't. Not once. The quiet stretched. Not uncomfortable. Dense. I don't want to hurt you, she said again, softer than before. I know. And I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I'm not asking for promises. That made her breathe out slowly, like she'd been holding it in for days. What are you asking for? She asked. I thought about it. The waiting. The restraint. The way we'd been orbiting each other like gravity was optional. For us to stop pretending this is accidental, I said. That's all. She watched me carefully. Not for pressure, for expectation. When she didn't find any, her shoulders relaxed. Okay, she said. Just that. Not yes. Not no. Okay. She stood, stepped closer. Close enough that the space between us felt intentional now, not charged. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her forehead lightly against my chest, like she needed to feel something solid before committing to the moment. I didn't move, didn't wrap my arms around her, just stayed. Her hand found mine, fingers warm, a little unsteady. She threaded them together slowly, like she was making sure she could pull away if she needed to. She didn't. We stood there like that for a long time. No kiss, no rush to define what came next. Just breathing in sync, the weight of choice settling quietly between us. This isn't simple, she murmured. I don't want simple. She smiled faintly at that. Tired. Real. Neither do I. When we finally pulled back, nothing felt finished, but nothing felt unresolved either. The tension hadn't disappeared. It had changed shape. Softer. Shared. As we turned off the lights and stepped out into the night side by side, I realized something that surprised me. Love hadn't arrived loudly. It had arrived the way truth does, when you stop running from it and sit down long enough to let it stay. I'm telling this from a different place now, not far in distance. The same bookstore, the same quiet street, the same door that still sticks when it rains, but far enough in understanding that I can see what we were really doing back then. What we were learning, without knowing that was the lesson. Nothing about us turned into a grand announcement. We didn't redefine our lives overnight. There was no dramatic first date story, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. What changed instead was subtler and more permanent. She stopped bracing. It showed in small ways. The way she let silences sit without rushing to fill them. The way she laughed without checking herself. The way her hand would find mine when no one was looking, not because she needed reassurance, but because she wanted connection. And me? I stopped trying to earn something that was never meant to be negotiated. I learned that attention isn't the same as patience. That waiting doesn't make love deeper, honesty does. I learned that wanting someone doesn't mean losing yourself, and restraint isn't the same thing as maturity. We moved carefully, but not fearfully. There were conversations we avoided at first, then circled back to when we were ready. There were days where the weight of her past surfaced, and days where my uncertainty did. We didn't fix those things. We made room for them. That's what love ended up being for us. Not rescue, not replacement, not proof of anything. Just space. She once told me she used to believe love was about timing, about meeting someone at the right point in your life. Now she thinks it's about recognition, about noticing the moment you stop hiding and choosing to stay present anyway. I think she's right. When I look back at the beginning, the almost touch, the pauses, the things we didn't say, I don't see missed chances anymore. I see groundwork. I see two people learning how to stand still long enough to be honest. We still don't rush. We still choose each other in quiet ways. And somehow, that feels more intentional than anything loud ever could. If there's one thing this taught me, it's this. Love doesn't always announce itself when it arrives. Sometimes, it waits for you to stop pretending you don't feel it. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this? Thanks for listening.